Councillor O'Neill sends her regrets. She will not be joining us this evening. Are we recording?
Yeah.
We are recording, so slick them up. You have an agenda that was emailed to you. What is your wish with the agenda?
Your worship, before we approve the agenda, I'd like to have, I see we're having it in camera tonight, I'd like you to add an item to that, litigation. In camera, thank you.
Alright.
And then I'll approve the agenda as amended.
And I'll second that.
Moved, seconded to approve the agenda as amended with the additional item under the closed section 11.2. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the minutes of the regular meeting of September the 26th.
I'll move that they be accepted as circulated.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor Bain. All in favor? Motion carried. Delegation, Mr. Buckwald and Ms. Chater,
Thank you.
if you please. Do we have some? Is it on your machine?
It should be on,
Oh,
yeah.
perfect. Okay,
Oh,
thank
there
you.
we go.
So
I
thanks
know
so much for
this.
having us today. We're really excited to be here. As was mentioned, so my name's Nabila. I'm Bicycle Nova Scotia's engineer, so I was hired to bring some cycling and walking best practices to our work. And this is Ben. He's our director of Blue Route and Bikeways implementation, and he's been very extensively involved in making sure this project goes very smoothly. So I'm just going to take you guys through like the first kind of process we've been going through here. So this is our Blue Route Hubs Bikeway project. So the project was funded by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as well as the Provincial Department of Energy with the intention of improving making cycling and walking more attractive in small communities. So the project has two parts. The first part was network planning, where we kind of assessed the current conditions in Mahone Bay and proposed a few routes for improvement. And the second part is the concept design. So that's the part we're kind of presenting on now. So back in June, we came here and we presented on the network planning and we did a presentation on the draft designs. And now we're kind of looking to showcase the final recommended designs that we've come up with. And so also, as mentioned here, a really big part of the project was kind of using an all ages and abilities lens. So a lot of transportation engineering has really changed in even the last 3 years. So in the past, a lot of times, we kind of focused on designing around cars, and now we're realizing that we have to do a little bit more to make cycling and walking more attractive and kind of rebalance the system. And so we're trying to hope to apply those kind of knowledge and principles to the designs that we've come up with. I should also add that the project was shaped throughout by a steering committee, and so the route that we chose to go through with concept design was selected by that steering committee. And so I'm kind of showing on the map over there, you can see the route. So the route's composed of two parts. The first part was a cycling route to school. So the committee really wanted a route where children can feel safe and comfortable cycling between the neighborhood on the south to the school on the north. And that was also seen as a really important connective piece for residents in general. And then the second part was creating a really intuitive route for both tourists and residents to access the Bay to Bay Trail. And that's a little bit of why we call it the Blue Route Hubs Bikeway project, because we want to connect to that provincial regional connection, which is the Bay to Bay Trail. And then a final part is we really want to use, for our project, we didn't just want to focus on cyclists, we wanted it to be about more than that, so also just about making strategic improvements for pedestrians, including those with mobility aids, and also trying to create a design that's intuitive for drivers as well. So I'm going to go through like each of the roads and kind of the recommendations we had for each one. So I'll start with Clearway Street. So Clearway Street, obviously very important for this route because that's where the school is, as well as one of the Bay to Bay Trail accesses. So a lot of the engineering guidance now kind of looks at the comfort for sharing the road for cyclists is really dependent on how fast vehicles are traveling and how many cars are using that road. So when we looked at the data for Clearway Street, we kind of found that the existing conditions, it's not going to be comfortable for people to cycle on the road. And because it's the home to the school and it's kind of a long distance route outside of town as well. It's not really a road where you can reduce traffic as easily. So for that reason, we recommended widening the sidewalk and developing a multi-use path. So the recommendation here would be to widen the sidewalk substantially. So right now it's 1.8 meters, but widening it out to 3 meters. So that accommodates 2 pedestrians walking side by side and a cyclist coming off to the side without really interrupting the pedestrians, as well as providing a space for 2 cyclists to pass each other. And the second part, we also are recommending that a 1.3 meter buffer be included between the pathway and the driving lanes, and that's to provide space for snow storage. It's also to provide space for the driveways that are there to kind of ramp down the buffer instead of within the pathway itself. And so that's an improvement for cyclists because of course it's more comfortable to not have to go up and down, but that's also an improvement for pedestrians with mobility aids, so someone using a mobility scooter or a wheelchair. That would be a really good way to make it more comfortable. And the space for this is going to come from narrowing the vehicle lanes, as well as a little bit of pushing it further back into the right of way. Okay, so now the next part is the Main Street and Clear White intersection. So how do we get people to Kinburn and Claremont is kind of the big question asked here. So what we heard from people here is that this intersection isn't very comfortable for people to cross. And so that's a really important thing to deal with for our connection to the school. So our recommendation here is to build a raised intersection. So that's where when drivers are approaching this intersection, they'll have to go up a little bit, so kind of to slow them down and help with yielding to pedestrians, and then they'll go back down after they pass the intersection. And so one of the reasons I recommended this over just upgrading to like flashing lights or something was just trying to like draw motorists' attention to the fact that they're entering a town center now. Like they're moving from that rural environment into a more developed town center environment. And as like the first main intersection into town, it seemed like a very good location to make that change, both for pedestrians and for like generally improving driver awareness. And the other recommendations we had there was adding a zebra crossing and for visibility, and as well as adding a yield sign for cyclists so that they know they have to slow down before they enter that intersection. Okay, so again, continuing with that Main Street component. So in order to get towards a place where you can access Kinburn Street, there has to be some travel on Main Street. So over here, we were looking at, there were kind of, because we know that Main Street you won't be able to continue something all the way down because of the amount of encroachments on the road, we were trying to look at something that would have like the least overall impact. So that's why again we're recommending a multi-use path. Main Street's a really busy road. It's possibly one of the busiest roads in town, and for that reason we really need that separation to make it comfortable for cycling and walking. So we had a choice between the north or the south side of Main Street, and we picked the south side just so that we could only have the one crossing location at Clearway Street instead of requiring a second crossing further east. And so there would be some impacts to a few mature trees in this location, but other than that, fairly minimal impacts overall. Okay, so the next part is where to make that actual connection between Main Street and Kinburn and Claremont. So when we did our initial discussions with the steering committee, there were 2 potential routes that were brought up. So one of them was to use Spur Street, and the other one was to use the NSLC parking lot. So we ended up choosing the NSLC parking lot for a few reasons. So one of them is that it's more direct. There's kind of a general sense that even if we develop Spur Street, a lot of people might choose to use the NSLC parking lot anyway because of that directness. And then the other attribute of that was also developing Main Street kind of towards Spur Street was a lot more constrained compared to developing it towards the parking lot. There would have been a lot more impacts to private property that way. And so when we thought about the parking lot, we also knew that we had to do more to increase the safety and comfort to make it safer for students cycling to school. Just traveling through the parking lot on its own is probably not comfortable or safe for at least for some people to feel comfortable because of drivers backing in and out. And so we're recommending potentially developing a pathway along the east side of the parking lot. So what we're kind of proposing here, like we have this image up there, but it's still it's pretty high level, it's pretty generic. It would have to be something discussed with the NSLC itself. So I will note, like, our proposal over there that we're showing, it would involve the removal of quite a few parking stalls, but I think with discussions with the NSLC, I think there is potential to add more parking stalls elsewhere within the property. So this is just something that's like very high level, preliminary, just to kind of propose an option to discuss later with the actual the NSLC. Okay. So from the pathway, we then get to Kinburn and Claremont Street, and a really big portion of the route is actually just traveling on Kinburn and Claremont. So we found with these roads that the actual level of traffic wasn't very high, but the speeds were quite substantial. So normally in a case where you have those high speeds and low volumes, you would try traffic calming just to reduce the speeds. But there were some limitations to that because Kinburn Street has a road cross section which limits the types of traffic calming, and then as well because the fire station is on that road, and that would mean that anytime the fire truck is leaving, it has to encounter all the traffic calming. So that's why we kind of ruled out traffic calming as a solution here. The other option would be separation, like we're suggesting on Clearway Street. But we also felt that wasn't a good option just because it is such a low volume road. We felt that the cost kind of outweighed the benefit on this road. But there was a third option that we're proposing, so that's advisory bicycle lanes. So they're kind of a new treatment. They're included in the new national guidance from 2017 on bicycle facility designs, but they're relatively new and they've only been implemented in a few places across Canada. But they haven't implemented quite a lot in Europe. So what happens is you have one central lane for vehicles and then you have two advisory bicycle lanes on the sides. And so they use a dashed line because cars can move over to pass if there are two approaching at the same time. So they have to yield to bicycles, but would be able to like move over to actually physically pass. So it works well on like a road that's relatively low volume, like Kinburn and Claremont Street, and is a pretty low cost treatment to implement.
And in places where people are not that used to always having a center line on a back road, it's maybe a little easier to adapt to, because there isn't normally a center line on a lot of back streets.
Yeah, like I think it's already more intuitive, because on many very like rural and narrow roads, you already kind of have to deal with that interaction when another vehicle shows up.
Does the advisory bike lane prohibit parking?
Yes, so I should have mentioned that. So the advisory bike lane would mean that parking could no longer be allowed on Kinburn and Claremont.
Claremont.
Yes. But we are, so the limits that we're proposing this is, I believe it's up to Pond Street, up to the parking lot. So like parking between Pond Street and Main Street would still be allowed.
Do you have a depiction of that coming up?
We don't, but I think I can, maybe after I finish the presentation, I can pull up the full view that we had of it.
Yeah, I was mostly just thinking
Yeah.
along in front of the ball field, and I think the roadway is probably wide enough to have parking on one of the two sides of the street, outside of these lanes. So you'd have these lanes, and
Okay.
then you'd have off-street parking that we could gravel. But I don't know if you had the opportunity to
Right.
get to check.
Yeah, so there were, okay, so one of the kind of assessments we made is we know there's some areas with the gravel shoulder where it is wide enough to park, and I think those places where you have the space, you can still maintain the parking. We didn't look at specific locations just because
No, that's fine.
just because I think it's kind of like a question to get into at more of the detailed level.
And that's
These
what
are worth exploring in
Yeah.
a more detailed stage of this moving forward.
I mean, people have already expressed concerns about people parking on both sides of the street, just in terms of pedestrians crossing, especially in the evening, back and forth to cars, and it's a little unsafe. So parking only on one side of the street could have advantages for pedestrian safety as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes.
Add time to the
left.
clock.
You got another
Like
30
soccer.
seconds.
Can you stop the clock?
Okay, cool. And the last part was Pleasant Street and Faubourg Road, so that was just to make that final connection to the trail. So for these two roads, we found, again, relatively low volume, but the speeds were still fairly high. So here we were proposing, so there was no issue with like the fire station, so here we're proposing traffic calming and as well as signage and pavement markings to kind of sign it as a bike route and provide some wayfinding for people from the trail. So the traffic calming we're proposing is on Pleasant Street, the use of like curb extensions near Main Street just to kind of signal that this is more of a residential road, not a main road. And the other part is the use of speed humps, just because they are a very low cost treatment and they're also very effective at actually reducing speed. And the final part I should mention is we would also want to sign these two roads as 30 kilometers per hour within the town. And I also forgot to mention that for Kinburn and Claremont Street, we also, because of the function of the road where we're using a central lane, we also want to sign that one as 30 kilometers an hour. So then I also, yes.
So this is Pleasant going up the hill that we see here, and then there's a T-junction with Fobo.
Yeah.
So that cross must be Fairmont or Fairmont.
That's just a generalized.
Okay.
That's kind of a generalization of the street. That
Yeah.
cross section. It's not like an
Okay.
accurate representation of a specific
And
spot.
then would there be again no parking on Pleasant?
Parking would be maintained for Pleasant. Yes, we
Oh, it would
actually
be.
we actually forgot to draw it on, but yes, it would be. We would keep it there.
These markings would fit in the existing traffic lanes.
Yeah.
When you took into consideration on Pleasant Street, did you take into consideration that that is a main trail route for EHS with the ambulance heading out into Lindenberg and those areas? That's their route they take is Pleasant Street.
Okay. We did not account for the ambulance travel. I think I had assumed that they would be using trunk 3.
No, they do that out to Northwest Road and
Okay. So yes.
they use Pleasant Street over.
Okay.
So in terms of the choice of traffic calming measures,
Yeah.
Yeah.
something to take into account.
They would have to be spoken with about the impact and whether there was any way to incorporate a speed hump that could work with the equipment that they use. That
Mhm.
might be possible. But yeah, it's not hasn't been factored. It's a good question.
Okay. So and then the last part I wanted to talk about, or the last two parts. So the first part is about the legislative considerations. So there's a few things that would have to be discussed with the province because the province does have some regulations over transportation infrastructure. So one of them is the 30 kilometer per hour speed limits. In Nova Scotia, the traffic authority can't post speed limits below 50 without permission from the province. And so some discussions with TIR would have to be had over that, but I think the main part that the province cares about is that the design of the road reflects the speed limit, and so the proposals here would kind of meet that need. And then the second part is the advisory bicycle lanes, just because it is a new treatment in Nova Scotia, and isn't something that's addressed in legislation, but again, it seems like they are willing to to look at different ways of dealing with this through their processes.
Are there advisory bike lanes anywhere else in Canada?
Yeah, so Ottawa has some, and there's also a partial one in a small town in BC that I'm aware of. Okay, and so then we have kind of the big part, which is the cost. So we did an initial kind of concept level cost estimate. So the cost came out at about $860K, and with the bulk of the project cost ending up on Clearway Street, just because it is a more major construction project compared to the rest of it. Yeah, and I would say for part of this, we know that there should be some grants out there to help with managing this style of cost. And
Interesting.
I think especially the Department of Energy, given that they help fund this, would be inclined to fund any kind of implementation.
Some of those components, are very much, there's a lot of synergies with some of our capital agenda, especially the Main Street piece where we have such a substantial water and sewer project anticipated. Not so much obviously on Pleasant Street, which is kind of a done deal.
But that's just painting.
But that's just paint.
Yeah.
So, and then Clearway Street's really interesting too.
Councillor Bain?
I think any notion of reducing parking in Mahone Bay would be somewhat controversial. The trend is we need more parking, which really, we've had discussions on this, and I mean, I realize in wintertime, there's not a problem. Festival time, major problem. In summer there is, so I think any notion of reducing parking could create quite a bit of discussion with the Chamber of Commerce and so on. Even when there's not festivals, if there's an event at the fire hall and at the ball field, it's pretty well tied up in the fire department, almost down to Main, almost to Main Street. I mean, you know, it does thin out when you get to Pond Street, but it's something that would really cause some
Of course.
for discussion. The other quick comment I would make is, I don't know if you've talked to NSLC, because they recently put up a barrier at one end, which they do open and close, and it allows the trucks to come in for delivery and so on. But I've had occasion to be in the liquor store, and, talked to them, and it was really to reduce traffic because there was so much traffic using it as a shortcut. Now, that wouldn't affect kids walking or bicycles, probably, but it definitely was something that would have, because they own that.
Of course.
They own that pavement, you know, so that would be another consideration.
From a Bicycle Nova Scotia agenda, I mean, there seems to be, you know, there's obviously capital investment, this, you know, $1 million, give or take, by the time all the real bills came in, to do the comprehensive aspirational plan. And then it seems like there's a number of you know, non-financial measures, traffic calming, lowering speed limits, and things that could be maybe done in a more expedited way, that doesn't necessarily require any dollars, that at least gets some of the improvements around traffic safety and bicycle safety kind of addressed. I know this is something on the speeds, and the speeds come up almost every council meeting. We're talking about, I think even in our metrics, we have a machine that goes around to different streets and measures the speed. So that's certainly very top of mind for everybody at the table.
Yeah, and the speed part was definitely something we wanted to address because when we looked at, I think when you think often of a residential road, you would expect a lot of drivers to be going around 30, but for Mahone Bay, we did find that the 85th percentile speeds, which is what people like to use to say what the posted speed is, we did find they were all close to 50, and that was like on Clearway, Pleasant, like all the roads we looked at. So I can see, I mean, I understand why the town is using this.
We've got like big statistical volume, and on I think Main Street this month, and I think the average speed was 57. So, and we're seeing that pretty consistent over the last 3 or 4 months, where we had big volume through the summer, and we're usually about 10 to 15% over the speed limit.
Well, and it's concerning because when they did some counts, and their counts were not visible, unlike the big sign, and they got higher numbers.
Yeah.
Which is indicative of the fact that the people are slowing down a little bit, so our high numbers are actually not as high as they probably ought to be. I just wanted to ask, which one of these includes the Clearway and Main intersection improvements? Is it on Main or on Clearway?
It's on Main. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the price on Main there is not too bad on the order of that water project if we did do that.
And NSLC. The route that you're trying to get people to, the Bay to Bay route, there are other, so if you thought about this over a multi-year, multiple phases, some things that can and cannot be done, eliminating the parking on Claremont is a big hill. That's a big that's like, so there must be other versions of the plan, maybe not optimized from a Bicycle Nova Scotia perspective, but get you a lot of what we're trying to do, like something that's actually doable, because there must be other interesting access points to the Bay to Bay Trail besides going up Pleasant and Fobo.
Yeah, so for Pleasant and Faubourg, there wasn't any parking elimination there. For Claremont and Kinburn, that part was more the cycling route to school, like that connection.
Okay.
But I do think, like, if the town has concerns about eliminating parking, I think if you're doing a multi-year phase, you could start with the parts that don't involve. So, like, I think Kinburn and Claremont and the NSLC parking lot are kind of the places where parking is eliminated, but the rest of the doesn't necessarily involve it. So
And I mean, I'm really interested to go back with a surveyor to Claremont Street, or at least do our own measurements, because it would seem to me that the treatment of Kinburn is happening within the road surface that is only a normal road surface width. So then if Claremont is wide enough to have off-street parking on one or both sides in excess of that, it doesn't seem like it would interfere with the application of that new roadway painting treatment with the bike lane.
Yeah, I think, what we basically focused our measurement on was the asphalt surface and, certain points of the gravel shoulder around it. We don't have a comprehensive survey done, so you would want that to be a survey completed, and that would allow you to see clearly where you might have space for parking that could be maintained adjacent to the road surface there. So I think with this proposal, if you look at it all at once, there are some big impacts that would require significant discussion. Like you said, there's things with EHS that have not been explored. There's this issue of parking capacity and where things are trending. I think our recommendation is that this project we do understand that Mahone Bay is considering completing a more comprehensive transportation plan, just an overall set of goals for transportation for the town. I think this proposal would be well suited to be considered as part of that. And then in terms of costing and development, I think those elements can be phased and approached as opportunity arises, and things like parking and that type of reallocation of space, I think can be, if those things fit within the way the transportation vision is going, and there are alternatives for those demands that are proposed as part of that, then maybe that makes this an easier decision to make for residents and council at that time. And but ultimately, there are different pieces of this that could be approached. If somebody wanted to look at the Main Street piece or parts of the Clearway piece, for example, Clearway, this is costed out all the way to the Beta Bay Trail. So if there was an interest in exploring the first phase of this between Main Street and the school, that would be a smaller project. I think that would be our hope, is that the town would look at this and take, I think the fact that the transportation plan is likely coming forward or could be coming forward is a great opportunity to have these types of discussions. You do have a project in your back pocket that has a lot of kind of thought and detail that's gone into it that I think is worth talking with residents about, and I'd love for people to learn more about it that way. But
I like the intersection of Clear. Sorry, Richard.
Sorry, there are other access points too for the Beta Bay Trail that could be explored rather than just back in over road.
sure, yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, absolutely.
The raised intersection at Clearway Street. I see that as could be a standalone project
Yeah.
to address the concerns of the parents and the kids dealing with traffic at that intersection on the way to school. You say Ottawa has the advisory bike lanes project,
yeah,
and do they have a single lane bi-directional vehicle traffic in addition to the two advisory bike lanes?
yeah. So there's always a single, like for advisory bicycle lanes, it's always a single lane. So
For
sometimes,
traffic,
yeah,
necessitating one of the vehicles to
yeah,
give way to the other.
yeah.
How's that working for you?
So there is kind of like a white paper on advisory bike lane implementation in North America. So
Okay.
actually like all the places that implemented it generally had positive experiences, including Ottawa. So there's kind of a link in our report to that paper, and I do think the results are quite promising.
In Europe, certainly it's been tried a lot, like you said, and I know that Colleen has some first-hand experience with that. She's not here tonight, but I know she's previously talked about that type of a street design that removes that center line as an assurance to drivers to make you more conscious of your environment. And it just so happens we don't have center lines on a lot of the back streets, so this would be the next step.
I watch drivers struggle with cars when there's a car parked on the side of the road, and one of them has to give way to get around the parked car, and they can't seem to agree on that.
Yeah.
Councillor Carver?
Yeah, I just have a question about the section on Main Street where I think it showed a shared walkway bike lane. And I wonder how that is managed in terms of pedestrian safety. Just the sense of having bicycles coming up behind you and
Yeah.
how is this?
Absolutely. So, okay, so a big part of it is widening it substantially. So trying to get to that 3 meters where I kind of described, you can have 2 pedestrians walking side by side, and there's enough space for someone else to pass. Generally, like the multi-use path is used quite extensively across Canada, and usually it's just cyclists have to ring a bell and then say like on your left or on your right to warn
I see.
pedestrians, and cyclists are required to yield.
And there isn't a bike lane marked on that
No,
surface.
absolutely
Yeah.
not. So it is normally you would put up a sign that shows like kind of a green circle showing pedestrians and bikes, so you know it's shared for both.
And you could probably have a cyclist yield to pedestrian sign where people are still learning,
Yeah,
like an educational, when you enter the area.
yeah. Like you could keep a sign up just for education, since a lot of people might not have actually encountered this type of facility before.
Because I know down here we spend a long time reinforcing to people that you are a vehicle.
Yeah.
And so
Yes,
this is a
that's right,
change.
yeah.
Okay.
You know what I really like about that Main Street plan is it just seems, well, beyond the fact that we are actually about to do work there in the next, say, 2 years, like major $5 million worth of work, is that, and by happenstance, I do live right in this area, but most of the houses, with the exception of one, are set back off the street. And with the amount of sewer and water work going on there and the opportunity to curb, like if you could curb on that side of the street, you could actually park on that side of the street, which we almost see no parking there other than through festivals. Like nobody would ever park there because why would you park there when you can park next to the sidewalk? That seems like a really interesting project.
Do you have another question?
Yes, Councillor Carver?
So the legislation around accessibility is coming,
Okay.
and some of the features that you've described on the driveway exits,
Yeah,
so that there won't be the
absolutely.
curb cuts.
Yeah.
In what you're recommending here, and that will be one of the recommendations coming out of accessibility too. Dylan, you've
Yeah.
talked about that, so that all the new sidewalk that we've just put in up Pleasant Street with all its nice curb cuts is going to be out of
Obsolete.
date.
Oh,
I mean, you don't have to have a verge, but you need enough of a level surface outside
Yeah.
of the curb cut that a wheelchair
Yeah,
can safely
Which-
pass. Yeah.
Which will probably be required at some point, but that's pretty far down the road. How far down the road is that going to be?
Built environment is the first phase of the Accessibility Act, so I don't think it's going to be that far down the road. I think we're going to have a plan that says we're committed to it within the next 2 years.
Right, so the Pleasant Street, options that you were showing didn't have that feature covered, so I'm just commenting on that.
With the Pleasant Street one, okay, so the reason for that one is because we didn't touch the sidewalk area,
Mhm.
and that is because I know that there was recent construction.
Yeah.
So I know you guys don't want to go back in there so soon, and that was another reason why I went with the speed humps as the traffic control, just because those are those low cost, you can implement without doing too much other work.
I know in your full report you also go ahead and make some recommendations that didn't come up in this about taking things from this and extrapolating them into the rest of the community. So like the zebra crossing, for example, I think in your report you recommend the use of zebra crossings in a widespread way. And if I remember correctly, and I certainly do, I'm in favor of that myself, and I think almost every municipality has switched over to them now. So that's just like extrapolating what you did there to some of our other crossings.
So I think the zebra crossing is a way of making it more visible compared to the parallel lines. I don't know if I would apply them everywhere, but I think at other priority intersections within Mahone Bay it would be useful, especially for like Main Street.
Another question, thank you. So given that Main Street is a provincial highway, I don't, is it permitted to have that raised intersection?
So I think, my understanding was that the road was under town control.
Yeah,
How does that work?
so it's more of a question for me, I guess. Yes, it would be permitted. But I agree with them that part of this whole thing should be reaching out to TIR
Mhm.
fairly early on, and we'd be including them in our transportation planning process just so that they're aware. They don't strictly have to approve it, but they have come down once in the case of Wolfville about 4 years ago and told Wolfville that the way they had painted a crosswalk was unsafe, and that was within the jurisdiction of Wolfville. It shouldn't have been. They shouldn't really have
I
been
see.
coming in on it, but
Okay.
they did because they technically do have overall jurisdiction. Generally, they leave it to your own.
Mhm.
You know, it's up to you to make the right decisions.
Okay.
I mean, telling tales at a school, Mayor, I'd say that, I understand, and I might be off base, but I believe the lease for the school is up in 2 more years or 3 more years at the
I don't
most.
think it's two.
Two more years at the most, and I believe, and again, this is well before my time, that sidewalk on Clearway Street was established and it was built as part of the school project.
Yes.
So, I mean, it make me think about in the context of another 10 or 15 or 20-year lease extension, that it might behoove us as a town and to communicate to the school board about letting them know that it's come to our attention that the sidewalk may not be up to specs with our modern requirements, and that this is the kind of plan that we'd like to see, and they should take that in consideration as they negotiate with the owners of the school building, so that maybe that can be woven into the next round of negotiations.
Well, I think what goes on with the contract, Nova Learning is out of it, and
Throw it
the
out
province
now.
has to take it over.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I think to the point that we can send a note expressing that we have a plan that we're interested in pursuing, and we'd like them to be part of that. That's Clearwater Street. That seems like the bulk of the capital investment. So anyway,
So, where do we go
very
now?
interesting.
CAO?
Well, I mean, I think primarily what they're looking for is to get this report out for us to be looking at it, for residents to be looking at it. So what I'm wondering is, would we be willing to direct staff to put this report up on our website at this point in anticipation of our transportation planning coming up, so that people have an opportunity to review it and let us know what they think? You can add anything else, but I think there was a general suggestion that we would try to get that report out there. Not saying that the council has adopted its recommendations, but the transportation planning process will be the opportunity to do that.
And that will be made clear when this is posted on the website.
I mean, that's my thought, is that we can make
Yeah.
a post saying, this was presented to council, it's the final report of the Blue Route Community Hubs project. We would like residents to be able to see it and,
Comment on it.
Yeah.
And that it will be
Comments.
addressed as part of the larger review, which
If
is.
council's comfortable making that connection, we have now said that we're committed to doing the transportation plan, so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can do that. And
Does that need a
is that
motion?
what you're,
That
well,
needs
we
a-
don't normally take a motion on this, and we don't
Oh,
really need a
right, yeah,
motion on this,
okay,
so I think
yeah.
we'll just,
Yep.
yeah, cause on a delegation, we wouldn't normally.
Staff
a
will
motion.
take direction.
And if
Without a
Maureen's good with
motion?
that, cause you'll probably be the one putting it up there, so.
Okay,
Wow,
So two?
that's interesting.
great.
And then
It'd
we'll
be-
let
I
you know
like that
when the
intersection.
consultations and things are
Yeah.
happening,
It'd
and
be
maybe
nice
you
to
don't
have
wanna be
Come
involved.
down and join us.
Yeah.
Yep, no, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good.
We appreciate
Really
your time and your interest in the project.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Look forward to, so just leave this on
I
here.
like it, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Dylan will
great.
flip it over.
Yes, thanks a lot. That's
We'll try.
exciting.
We'll
We
try to
could,
flip
we
it over.
could do that just as a matter of course. Right, but apart from, yeah, okay. Well, let's go to correspondence action items. We have 3 letters from Mr. Eisen or Eason? Eason, yeah. At Bayview Community School. One is for financial support for the Baybu fundraiser. One for financial support for the Meal Equity Program. And one for financial support of the yearbook. CAO, you had some comments on these?
Well, obviously, we are always asked to comment on whether we have grants monies that are left, and we're pretty much allocated everything within grants for the year. So I would suggest that council, 2 things, I guess, consider all of these things together to the extent that whatever you're doing in this regard will be a bit of an exception for this year, and then maybe let them know that we do have a program. But council does have the discretion to decide if, rather than just referring them, if anything here seems like it needs special consideration. I would say, with the awareness that we have used our grants, the budget is not absolutely unbreakable, so please do have your conversation. I don't want to.
With regard to 4.1, we have supported that in the past.
Yeah.
The other two are new to me.
Councillor Driver?
Whether that means anything for deviation from the fact that, you know, whether it's there or not, it is a fundraiser.
The Babu is, yes.
Yeah, it is a fundraiser.
Of the three, if there were to be one, I would certainly put my support behind the meal equity program.
Absolutely. Yeah. Deputy Mayor.
We always did put a little picture our crest in the yearbook. I think it was $100. And I agree with Councillor Carver. I would see doing the yearbook, doing the meal program, and just let Mr. Eason know that if they want money next year, it has to be here 1st of March to get in that grant program. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well,
When would the money be required for the yearbook?
Now.
Now?
And
How about-
that'd be soon getting ready to go to print, I would
Will
think.
it? Okay.
would we do that as a add in the yearbook? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's just a crest.
Yeah,
Congratulations, grads, town
yeah,
Mahone Bay.
exactly.
Our timing is in the bylaw is March 31st.
Yeah.
So this would be an extra appropriation
This year.
outside of that. So I think a note that would, to Principal Leeson suggesting that feel free to send in a request for next year for the
Babu?
no, pardon me, for the
Meal program.
4.1.
sorry guys, I'm a little for the yearbook, and then we would make an appropriation of $250 towards the meal equity program in Bayview that we would fund this fiscal year. Does that seem like
Meal
the spirit
equity-
of where we are?
It's 220, is it 225 a week?
225.
225 a week for the toonie meal. Does the kids all pay a toonie for
I
the
can
meal?
feel it on that. Yeah, there's a meal that it's $2 on Tuesdays. You can get lunch for $2, and that's the idea is that it makes it more accessible to a larger group of student
Universal,
population.
everybody.
What happens Monday to Friday?
Usually, it's different depending on
Bring
the
your lunch.
grade, but it's in the neighborhood of $5.
Oh,
That's what
gee.
it says in this.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So we're subsidizing the meal one day a
One
week.
day a week, yeah.
I have a comment
Yeah,
there.
certainly.
I mean, it's not like 225, that's 1 week.
That's 1 week.
Yeah,
So I don't know how many weeks there are in a school year, but let's say there's 35. So you multiply that out, that becomes a fairly substantial
it's a lot
number.
of money.
Yeah.
And so that's one way of looking at it. Well, the other thing is, we give a lot of money in education
It's
To the
true.
province.
through the province. Well, where does the province get their money?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So my point is, there's continuous downloading every place you look.
Right.
And I think it's something that we have to really take under consideration. Small ticket items, like 4.1 and 4.3, yes, I think 4.2 may require some further discussion on a budget standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what 3,200 is, pretty easy to calculate, so.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
No, I have a comment, but I didn't raise my hand. I agree with Council Dan. Now, when you look at a broader picture, it's a lot of money.
I think when we look at, we made good, I think terrific progress as a council by moving to the current policy, which is March 31st. Get your deadline in, and we can prioritize all of the requests as a pool. that being said, my sense of things is that Principal Lease is probably aware. This, I believe, is the first request that would have come directly from the administrative staff of the school. To my knowledge, maybe that I haven't seen that in recent years. A direct request for funding from the school, but I think there's any number of lists. We're probably going to get a request for funds once a month, right? Usually, council usually reviews some requests through correspondence, at least almost every meeting, if not every second meeting. So, to Councillor Bain's perspective, there's only so much we can do as a community and as a council based on our funding. But I think in this situation, we probably could dig deep and fund a one-time amount versus somewhere in the $250 range that the principal could administer as he feels fit.
So $250 to cover all 3 requests, is that what you're suggesting?
I believe our entire grant budget for the year, our whole program's only several $1,000s, right? So
If that, yeah.
so I think $250 would as a contribution would be within our level of affordability.
Deputy Clerk?
Just to clarify just a couple things about budget and stuff. We had for several years, since before I started here, we put $50 in the budget every year for the yearbook and $50 every year for Baby. And that just went through as part of the regular budget so that when a child with a little poster came into the office, we just handled it that way.
Right.
It has not been claimed for at least 2 years. And this is the first year that, because it hadn't been claimed for, maybe it was more like 3, that it didn't go forward in the budget. So no, we haven't received anything like this before, but that's because up until a few years ago, it was always just in there, and a child would show up with the little thing, and we had already made the arrangements, so staff just took care of it when they came in.
Councillor Bain?
I'd be quite willing to take a look at the budget and come up with $50 and the $50 if that will move things along for Baby in the yearbook. If that's
And
traditionally
advise the
what it's
school
been.
about our policy.
I think 4.2 is going to need some consideration.
Okay, somebody,
Just on the budget part, I mean, there really isn't a need to go, like, if council wants to spend $100 more on a line item than you would otherwise have spent, we've had plenty of line items, unfortunately, that have come in over by more than that, and we have some that come in under. So if you feel comfortable within reason to go $50 to $100
but there's also the precedent that we're setting here.
Yeah.
When PVEC comes in, or someone, the school up in Blockhouse comes in unexpectedly,
LCLC.
and they're pointing to what we did for the other school. So
Well, that's why
The
we've been
difference
treating
is
every
this
one
is
this year
a
as a
school
test year.
within our town.
Right.
That's
Yes,
a comfortable boundary for me.
but we're feeding probably 80% of out-of-town students.
Right. I was just thinking we've been doing all year a warning to people where we say we
Yeah.
now have a policy. We'll tell them that, so it's not like this is an every year thing.
That's fine with me.
do you want to make your motion, Councillor Bain?
I'll probably just withdraw my comment if it's going to create some precedent setting for other people applying outside of our policy.
I think our current policy. So this would be an appropriation outside of the current policy. I think we're all in agreement there, right? That this is outside of March 31st, and the money is expended.
Do we have an advertising budget for the town?
We discussed this with respect to the 2 applications that we got at our last, I think it was our very last meeting, right? For advertising as a grant. And we agreed that if anything, we wanted to try to make sure that we told people that advertising as a grant was considered a grant.
Okay.
And so should be applied for that way. Okay. Yeah, sorry. But I mean, we do have an advertising budget, and we do have some community publications that we do, like, put an annual thing in, that have always happened that way. They don't usually make a request.
I'd move, Mayor, that we make a one-time extraordinary grant to Bayview School in the amount of $250. Period.
To be applied as the school administration sees fit.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we should send a letter stating our policy too at the same time.
Second.
You know.
we normally, I think we normally do
Yeah.
that. You second, Councillor Carver?
Yeah.
Everyone's clear on the motion?
And that we say, that we send it, that it's to cover, thank you for your 3 requests.
Yeah. Exactly.
This
And
is-
next
this
year,
is a-
be aware of the deadline. This is the exception year.
That's right, and this is a special, because it is a school within the town boundaries that we're choosing to address it, right? And it will be spent as the school administration sees fit, whatever. All in favor? Motion carried, good motion. Okay, request curb painting in front of the Quinlan building.
Very timely.
So I would comment on, talking
yeah.
about transportation and bikes and all that. So Derek and I went out to take a look at this one, just to be able to give some commentary to it. And what we observed is, hopefully everybody has a good sense of where I'm talking about as we're talking about here. On one side of the Quinlan's entrance and exit, there's a very tiny amount of curb, too small for someone to park at, just a few feet. And then Suttles has their entrance and exit. On the other side, so coming towards Town Hall, there's a section before the next laneway that is fairly large. Typically, 2 vehicles try to squeeze in there. So what Derek and I went out and we actually measured that section, and it is short of the size that would normally be acceptable for 2 vehicles. So if we were actually marking spaces, we wouldn't have 2 parking spaces marked in front of that section of curb. And that's the section of curb that's immediately outside of the Quinlan as you're turning, where the visibility issue is created. So right now, with the increasing size of vehicles, what you would get is you get a vehicle that's actually backed up further into that laneway than it should be. And so our suggestion is that we paint the curb on that side to reflect that there is a single vehicle's worth of parking space. So we would essentially come in on both sides of that curb. So we'd come from the Quinlan, but we'd also come from the next laneway.
Oh.
And we would come in 10 feet on each side, allowing for the remaining space to be no larger than 1 vehicle would try to squeeze into it. And that gives the Quinlan a buffer so that they can see and get out and turn more directly, because you won't have a vehicle right up to the edge of the curb. So that's what we'd recommend, because to be honest, we should be doing more of those measurements now, especially with the increasing size of vehicles. It's always painful to lose a parking space, but there isn't really a parking space there to lose.
That photograph was really illuminating.
So our recommendation is we do paint that curb to cut that down to 1 space, and we will lose 1 space.
Your Worship, I move that we appoint staff to paint the 2 ends of the curb at the Quinlan.
Second that.
Second by Councillor Bain.
Just before we, as part of discussion, there's a similar situation at the post office, the exit from the post office, where the visibility is terrible.
With the curb in front of Eli's?
Yeah.
The worst really is in front of the post
Right
office.
in front of the post office.
because that's where people are turning
Yeah,
I mean,
it's,
between the in and the out from
Yeah,
the
in
post
between the,
and from Claremont.
Well,
We'll have to measure that
Well,
and
let-
see how many.
It's-
let's
it
vote
just
on the other
moves.
motion. We
Yeah.
have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Yes.
Now, somebody want to make a motion to direct staff to go measure the post office curb?
So moved.
do that.
I think we can just take a
You
look.
can take it out.
just a look at it.
Good.
Alright.
All right. Okay, last item in correspondence action, Ann Gaby's letter advocating for provincial and federal funding for public transit. The jury's still out on that.
Yeah, I think we could
Receive and file.
receive this letter, Your Worship, till more
Okay.
information comes forward.
Motion to receive and file, seconded by Councillor Bain, by Councillor Feeney, all in favor? Motion's carried.
so will a letter go back to her saying that
No, we just filed it.
but it was, she's asking for this information?
Well,
So she doesn't get any answer to her letter? Is that the answer to my question?
So, I think the
She's just
town
advising, right?
is yet to make a decision on whether we will actively support I mean, we do in principle, but we don't have any kind of details or costing involved.
It certainly doesn't ask
Oh,
for.
we recommend it, yes. Okay.
It's more just to make
Yeah,
us
so it
aware.
is more.
Yeah.
It's just information.
Acknowledging their advocacy is really what it is.
Let's go on to our section 5 information items,
Motion to receive and file, your worship.
seconded by Councillor Now. All in favor?
But before we
Sorry,
do that,
question?
the doctor recruitment update doesn't seem to exist in the Monday mem. Oh, October the 1st. That was last week. Never mind.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Oh, yeah.
And now the moment for which you've all been waiting, the staff report.
First, I was wondering, I mean, they do a very good job, Mr. Hyde, and I imagine Mo's part of the routine. Do we have to see this every month and go through it? I mean, it seems to me it's a.
You don't have to talk about it.
No, I guess, yeah,
You don't
yeah,
know.
have it for.
It's good to see it, see what's
Yeah,
going
I
on.
mean, it is a great report, but it's every month we go through
So
it.
at every second meeting, we only update the first part of it. So if you look
Okay.
through the rest
Yeah,
of
I
it's
know,
actually
I
not
looked through
updated.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
but I just.
Only the very first item changes
Yeah,
on the second meeting.
that's right.
This is not on the town's website, is it?
It's in the council package. Like the
No,
whole
no, but
council
I mean,
package.
what I'm thinking of, and you and I have talked about this before, about having a portion of the drive that councillors could log into. So it wouldn't have the kind of meat that staff deal with on a day-to-day basis, but it would have more than what the public would necessarily see. I would like to see this report maintained on the website, so I can go in any day and look at it and know that it's up to date within X number of days.
I mean, it'll be up to date every 2 weeks. Like
Yeah.
that's we couldn't update it any more regularly than we do because it is a continuous process. It does take a fair bit of time to do that.
But if you're working on a piece of a project that's on this report, and you reach a milestone that you would say would move you from orange to yellow, or yellow to some variation of green, how long does it take to go to the report and register?
If I could answer that, we were actually not able to even come up with a version of this that we can all work on ourselves. So this
Why?
is, I don't know. We tried to have a shared document, we worked with IT, we had all kinds of great ideas and suggestions, but it doesn't work.
Oh, it's an IT shortfall
It's
or
a,
shortcoming.
no, it's a document and we had hoped there was a way that we could, so first thing tomorrow, I'm gonna go through this and, we'll add the motions that happened tonight.
Yeah.
It will then go to, we have, I know who I send it to first because who will get it back faster because it has to go from one of us to the next.
And it basically takes the same amount of time to make the rounds as it does to then put the council package out. So
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm perfectly happy to see it once a month, because it sort of reminds me of things that are going on.
My question was, this is twice we've seen it this month.
Was it twice this month? Oh,
You just have really close together meetings.
Meetings,
Oh.
you know, it was not, it was
Yeah.
September, October, but
But
anyways.
all we did between the September
Yeah.
26th
Yeah.
and now was change the first section. We
Yeah,
didn't
that's
go
right.
all the way through.
but would it be, could set a pattern so it's the first meeting of every month that it comes? I mean, is that-
Well, so what we do is the second meeting of every month gets the complete update.
Yeah.
And then all you get on the in-between, on the first meeting of each month, is the new items that were added to the first
Yeah.
report from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Just so that you have a record of everything you told us at your last meeting.
It's great that we
So
see them,
really,
but I
all
don't-
we would look at is these ones down here that are new.
Yeah.
Then they say that they were added in September.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 new ones from last meeting. So, and Mo's already finished all of them except that one. And that was for me. So Mo did all of hers.
You're doing good.
Yeah, so
Yeah, doing
that's
good.
really the only new part this meeting.
I think it's great to have it there. We don't have to discuss it actually every meeting, but it's nice to be able to look at it and see it.
So were there any questions about the report?
Nope.
I mean, Mo got everything done, so there's
Not
nothing to talk about.
Okay. Let's go to the audit management report. I'm sorry, asset management report. See, I'm reading it up there, not there,
It's hard to read up there. Here, that's a little better.
especially with my eyesight.
I don't have it on my screen anymore because it's up there, so I've gotten quite adept at only reading it up there. So it's been a while since we talked about the Asset Management Committee, but I have.
They're gonna think we forgot about them.
Well, that's why I'm thinking now is the time to try to schedule a date and reach out and try to get a plan to meet in November. And I don't know if the main discussion here is just if council's comfortable for this motion is when do we want to try to schedule the meetings. I made a suggestion of maybe I think I said the second Thursday of the month, second or third. That was just looking at what we've been using. Yeah, second or third
So
Thursday of each
second
month.
Tuesday would be council, second Thursday would be asset management.
I don't think Mo's the expert. I don't think we have any second or third Thursday meetings right now. So that was just a thought based on our.
Just for me, the third Thursday works best. I have been at the fire hall on the second Thursday.
And Mr. Mayor, you're the other council member on that committee.
I'm the chair of that.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the third Thursday?
That's okay by me, I don't,
So that at
Third
least gives us
Thursday.
something to reach out to the public members and say this is what we're looking at. And then if at that first meeting everyone says this is a terrible time, we can talk about it again. And then in terms of staff attending these meetings, because I do want to be able to bring staff into these meetings
Mhm.
to talk about the specific assets, it would be ideal if this meeting happened either during or adjacent to the workday. So I don't think it would be a problem to ask somebody to stay for an extra hour. If we wanted to meet at 4:30 or 5, but to call people back in for 7, especially with somebody like Megan who's worked all day, I'd rather not. Not that we don't work all day. She's had to get covered in chemicals and deal with all that stuff.
It's telling us something, eh?
Yeah.
Hearing that, I'd move the council direct staff to contact members of the Asset Management Committee and arrange for the committee's initial meeting to be held in the third week of November.
Second.
the third Thursday,
The third
Of
Thursday of
November.
November.
and then continuing
right.
monthly after that.
So I don't
December
think all
would
that
be
has to
the
go
third
into the
Thursday.
motion. I've seconded the motion.
Is there a time to be?
So yeah, I mean, this is kind of for Richard and David. Like, are you comfortable to meet during the day? Could we try to meet at 4:30 or 5? What would be?
I'd like to see it a little bit earlier than 4:30. If the staff are going to be going to the meeting at the end of their workday, let's do it at 3:30. And if we have to stay till 5:30, we're both getting an hour out of it.
Exactly.
That sounds good. So that's what I'll float to the public
Yeah.
and
I
to the
agree
public.
with that.
3:30.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Okay.
Good start.
Capital investment plan.
All right. So I mentioned to you guys last month that I would be coming up and trying to schedule a session, and I think from the attachments here and everything, you can see why I'm recommending it.
Don't plan anything for November.
So I've looked at everybody's schedules, in particular the mayor's schedule, and it looked like the October 28th, 29th, and 30th were clear of other meetings, and everybody seems to be around. So day or night, I'm certainly happy with whatever, but I thought our best bet to get everybody here would be to do this now. And I think we are talking about a 2-hour meeting. I'd like to take the time.
27th in the morning or the 29th anytime.
29th any time works for me.
Yeah, 29th.
We can do that during the day.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got MJSB that night. Cancel the next
morning
night.
of the 29th. That certainly works for me.
Sorry, Mayor, we're talking
October,
we're talking the
November.
29th, right?
Of November.
Oh no, are we talking October or November?
October.
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 Yeah.
October. Oh.
Yes.
Oh. Thank you, Councillor Carver. You're as confused as I am. 29th. Hey, it's a good week.
Well, that's what I thought it was going
Yeah,
to be for you.
It's kind of like it's the 5th week of the month. And we never have it.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah.
The
Is that,
5th week
is
of the
that
month.
one of those 3 paycheck months? This is the best months of the year.
They're good. Yeah.
Everybody.
No, not quite. November 1st to ride, I guess. Close enough though.
But does the October 29th?
October
look good?
29th is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Do you want to do 10 to 12? Like I'm looking for 2 hours.
Sure.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Penny, does that work for you?
Yeah, I'm just erasing my
Okay, great.
exercise class.
Just give me an excuse to erase the exercise class.
So 10 to 12, if you prefer that too.
Mhm.
Oh, 9 to 11 would be fine. I just.
I think we should have 9 to 11, and there should be coffee and donuts. 9 to 11.
9 to 11?
2
we can
hours.
do that.
Okay. Here at Town Hall, or do you want to go off-site to do it?
I think we're fine to do it here.
What are we calling it?
Well, it is a special meeting, but it'll be a special meeting focused on the long-term capital investment plan, 2019 to 2025 capital investment.
Can we bring in special wish list items that are not yet on the official
I think if
plan?
you look at that long-term capital
There's a lot
investment
of-
plan that we have now, the old one,
A lot of special
it has
wishes.
a lot of things on there like that. So anything you might imagine, it's better to bring it up because we need to figure out where it would fit, and we need to know if Derek and I need to do any costing. And there are items on there that we've never moved from pie in the sky to actually theoretically happening. So either they get off the pot, or
Is this the first time we've had a meeting around our capital wish list?
I think so. My
Yeah.
understanding from Luke
Well,
is that
because
the
usually
previous
we
practice.
just threw our wishes.
Yeah,
over
exactly.
here.
Well, it was
Send your
it was a
card
fun-
in.
It was a function of our filing with the province. So I think the last time we did that was with Jim,
Mhm.
and that was because we had to. I'm not sure if you have to do that every year or not.
Well, council is supposed to approve it every year,
Yeah.
but typically it just became kind of okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that in there. But what we didn't do is come back and use in the budget process. So Luke and I came along and kind of naively thought, like, well, here's council's capital investment plan. Let's start putting this stuff into the long-term budget. And evidently, that was never really what it was developed for. So we need to score those
Yeah.
two things, because all we should do
Okay.
when the province asks for capital investment plan is forward them our actual
Yeah.
long-term
Right.
budget. It shouldn't be a separate document.
Yeah, the understanding we always had was if something did come up and funding did become available, you looked at
It's on there.
Yeah.
Had
the
to be on
plan
the list.
and hoped it was there.
It was in the books.
Had to be on the books.
Yeah, because for gas, I mean, it's a gas tax requirement, and so if it later came up, they'd say,
Yeah.
well, why wasn't it in your plan?
And that was always Mr.
Yeah.
Wenzel's advice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Put it in there, because if it's not there, you're never going to get it.
Uh,
But even if you don't think you're ever going to get it, put it in.
For that meeting, I think it would be probably worthwhile just to have a bit of a state of the nation of exactly what our actuals are. I think the package has kind of our budget and our original
That's
program.
absolutely where
So-
to stop short and basically just buy Luke,
Yeah.
Eric, and I time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
put it in your.
Yeah.
So there'll be a package that will go out like a normal meeting package with that information.
Okay?
So I don't think we did this motion unless we're in discussion on it now.
No, I haven't got a
Okay.
mover or a second.
I'll move that council schedule a special meeting to discuss the development of the 2019-25 capital investment plan for October the 26th, 9 to 11.
27.
27th, pardon me.
29.
29th?
29th, yes.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, I'm glad Carl looks at me like, yeah, I'm not the only one that says.
I thought we said the 29.
Yeah, we did. I got it marked on my calendar.
It's gonna be a 3-day session.
Like some of us
It's
each
getting
day.
longer, John. It's
Yeah.
getting longer.
Just a question before we vote on that. When do we receive some visibility from area about kind of the parameters of the area dividend? Like at what point in their year do we normally get some plus or minus 10% or 15%?
I mean, I think they updated it every meeting,
Yeah.
but when our board, like the quarterly board meetings, there'd be one before Christmas and
Yeah.
then one more before the end of the year.
I have an answer for you for
Bye.
Christmas.
Fair enough. But just the relativity of what we have in the budget from area, what we have in the budget for D-transfer tax, what we have in the budget versus what do we have any new information that would give us
So
confidence
yeah,
in those dollars
year to
showing
date on
up?
the revenue side as well. Like, what are we actually expecting for next year? Is this year going to be better than we thought it was?
Just a projection.
Yeah, because that could be easy to miss. So I'm going to make a note about that because we're usually thinking about reporting on the state of the expenditures.
And one last thing about the information in the package, is this still alluding to the 2018-2019 rates? For example, the infrastructure charge and the D-transfer tax? I thought it was late breaking, but we had made changes to both those items. I just don't know. I just don't know if they're reflected in the package that we received for this meeting.
Yeah, that's a good.
Anyway,
These
it's
were
a
taken
takeaway.
from the budget that was on the website. So yeah,
I thought that
That's a good
our
question.
infrastructure charge was moved to 275.
Yeah, we did- we
Transfer
did
tax
both
at
those
2.5.
changes.
So I just
And I'm
couldn't remember when I
wondering-
looked at it.
I'm wondering if even though we did them, we stuck to the
It was
budget
late.
estimates from because you kind of want to be conservative like
Yeah.
that.
Fair enough.
So it may be that the reference there, you're right, is outdated, but the
Yeah.
budget may still was likely still accurate because this is the budget that's on our website. So I'll just double check with Luke that that is in fact the accurate budget we did actually approve at the end of the year, rather than something we used in the draft process.
Are we I guess it's fair enough on the budget. I'm just wondering what we're really charging.
Oh, you know,
we
we
must
did
be
we
really
did make
char-
the increases.
We
yeah.
made the increases.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
So I think that was 20 grand between those two items in real revenue. So
but I don't know that we adjusted the revenue projections in the budget though. I think
fair,
we left
fair,
it. Yeah.
fair enough.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for the meeting on the 29th of October at 9 a.m. to discuss the capital investment plan. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Here I wrote down November 29th. I'll be all by myself.
Have fun
can
with
have
that
either
one.
November 29th.
Better
Yeah.
bring your own coffee and
Your
donuts.
motions will go down really smooth, Joseph.
Exactly.
Next item, Christmas holidays. CAO has a plan.
Great.
Well, yeah, all of the staff had a conversation. This is a long-running thing. It gets discussed every year. I'm not sure if it's ever been brought to council before, but we've got a lot of new staff, and we figured we'd bring this discussion to you. Most units have made a determination that we don't see enough walk-in between Christmas and New Year's to keep everyone in the office. It does give us a chance to get some staff out who normally have to be there for coverage for each other, so they'd be able to take some of their vacation days, which is good because we want staff to use up their vacation days. But it would mean being closed to the half dozen or so people who usually come in during this period, and we put up signage.
I'm happy to recommend that council, or move that council direct staff to close the town office to the public on December 27th, 30th, and 31st.
Second.
And then staff will be using their annual leave credits to accommodate
That
those
doesn't have to be
days.
part of the motion.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think
I think we need to be clear that we're gonna close for 3 days and they will take vacation credits for those 3 days.
I just assumed that that would be an operational issue.
Well, and I'll add that it's not our recommendation. The recommendation here is that that be the decision of staff, as opposed to that it be mandatory that everybody take vacation.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
I see that as an operational issue, not a council
and
issue.
you and I had this discussion yesterday, if we close the office, right, without requiring people to take vacation time, then people
I
can
expect to be
expect
paid.
to be paid for those days.
exactly.
You close the office,
agree.
go ahead and close it, but I expect to be paid those 3 days.
Well, then you come in and work.
Uh,
The office being closed to the public doesn't say anything about whether staff are here. So-
I think it's very confusing and it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
very
we definitely
in-
need
inspecific.
clarification on that aspect.
So I'll clarify right now what we're recommending. We're recommending that the office be closed to the public for 3 days. And that during those 3 days, staff will have discretion whether to use vacation or not, but that we will not need to maintain a minimum complement because we'll be closed to the public.
Okay.
Which means that we already know the front desk staff have said that they would like to take the time off. But I myself will not use 3 days of vacation during this period. I have a ton of work to do. It would be a great time to get that work done. And to just sit at home using 3 days of vacation is a bad idea, frankly.
That's fine, that's clarification.
Yeah.
The other thing is now, the non-office staff remain, Derek still comes in and they're here, or are they on call, or what's the story there now for snowstorms?
It'd just be on call.
So as noted in here, they would be treated the same way they always are.
That's-
Which is that they always have to maintain a skeleton crew, like there is a minimum amount, and they know they need to be on call. But within that, Derek always has discretion to allow people off. I think normally there's a who took the vacation last year over Christmas kind of conversation that they go through and make sure that it's fair.
That's fine.
I'll be supporting the motion when we get to that, but I'm curious about like, what is our formal policy about rolling over a vacation? So vacation earned, not taken, rolling over into the next year. You know, in our financial statements, we're disclosing that our ongoing vacation liability is now up to $40,000. And I'm assuming that it'll continue to grow. I don't know where we are relative to previous years, but like that's a material number that you see in the obligations in the statements. So like at some time you'd want to formalize the policy about how we're going to, how that's going to be, either that obligation should come down or we're just going to pay it out at the end of someone's tenure.
CAO has a plan.
Yeah, that is one of the top priority HR things that, so as part
on
of
your
a
list,
leave
right?
tracking, we're implementing a leave system that also includes reconciling the current outstanding leave and then making a plan to, if we say that here's the cap and here's the carryover and anyone's over it now, which I expect, well, whatever we'll end up at, we'll have people who are currently over it,
Yeah.
then we need to work with that person to get it used. The hope would be that to actually have them take the time rather than to pay it out. But either way, we can't have it become, an unmanageable liability in the future.
Do you think that by next,
Well, I think vacation should be stressed, that you take your vacation, it's there in the package for a very good reason. You take vacation. Exceptions can be made with permission to do it if someone was planning a wedding 2 years down and they wanted that additional week to carry it over. I think that's something that's pretty common in the private sector, that you make a request why you're gonna take the carryover. Other words,
It's used in the period in which it's generated.
And vacation is almost always now. I mean, there, as you say, there are special exceptions that are made by the CAO of an individual when they request it, and they're made in writing. But that being said, we also have loo time, and loo time is actually probably the more problematic thing in terms of a period in which it must be used or paid out.
yeah,
So establishing an automatic, if you don't
Yeah.
use it, it is paid, period, even within a month maybe. That's what we really need. That will tighten up the liability the most.
and if you do request the carryover and don't use it, you lose it.
it's difficult with
That's the
some
way
of
we
the
did it.
staff that are integral to the utilities and the timeline, like a hurricane, and overtime. I'm sure most of this accrued vacations probably due to just overtime and the realities of running utility with a small contingent of people. But at some point, we either have people take their vacation or we write checks because we don't want to, because every year
Have
just
it
with
all at once.
right, because every year just with COLA clauses and earned raises, the problem gets bigger and bigger. So we just want to wind it up.
And the
Deputy Mayor
context
has
of the
a-
motion is that this helps us to get the staff to use up some of the vacations.
Deputy Mayor has a motion.
Councilor Carver had the motion.
He was calling the
Second.
question.
Did we second Councilor Carver's motion?
Yes,
Who seconded? You did, okay. Motion's on the
10
floor.
minutes ago.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
Well, thank you, everybody. So I mean,
That's
that is great. We'll try it out this year. We'll see.
We'll all be
whether
down
we
for
get any
coffee on
feedback.
December 30th, CAO. So have the muffins on the table.
That'll be the biggest snowstorm of the entire year you watch.
Bring your keys down.
And the power will go out.
Right.
Yeah, if the power's out, I don't know. That's going to create another question.
Code red, code
Let's
red.
hope that doesn't happen.
Okay. Let's go to report cemetery committee.
Oh, we talked about this last meeting, but maybe it was.
We did. It was a
That's
verbal
right.
report because I
Oh, yes,
didn't
that's
get this
right.
in the package, so now it's in the package.
That's right, and I looked at it and I think we adequately
Covered.
covered everything in the previous meeting.
Okay. Audit committee, September 19th. Deferred from September the 26th.
So now we've got our statements.
They're all there.
These statements, although they're stamped draft, are they actually final?
Yeah, these are the final statements. I guess they
So we
insist on
approve
having them.
Do we approve them? Fair enough.
Yeah, I think they insist on having them stamped until we pass this
Okay.
motion, and then we'll take the stamp off.
The only question I had on the minutes, and I might just be going by memory, and we don't have to talk about it at this meeting, but I'd really just like another just update around the town's placement of security on the area liabilities. Are we, and we talked about this at the audit committee, are we obligated to only backstop to provide any backstop beyond areas assets and areas insurance policies? And because if we're ever talking about further, as you can see from the consolidated financials, like the liability on area dwarfs that of the town, and the total liability far exceeds the entire town's balance sheet. So it's if the assets and the insurance policies are the security that we're backstopping, fine. But if we're backstopping kind of unlimited liability as a town, that's something I would like to know before we get into a conversation about further investments.
We'll have an answer for you before Christmas.
Totally reasonable.
Well, and
Mr.
actually, on
Hines.
that note, Aaron is, I think, I think before Christmas, Aaron will
Yeah.
be here
I'd
to talk
kinda like-
about what the next phase of expansion of Eller's House would look like. And that's going to be a huge part of that conversation, because we'd also be contemplating adding to that, and whether that would be secured against the new turbines, which, so, yeah.
We
same
really
with-
need whoever the financial whoever has the idea of exactly what the legal liability is. I'm not sure if that's Aaron or who actually has the real knowledge of exactly what security the taxpayers of Mahone Bay are backstopping. But I really think that we were told
We'll
one
get the
thing.
answer for
Yeah,
you.
you guys
Mr.
know the
Frady.
point. Okay, sounds good. Seems reasonable.
But it is an important question.
It
Yeah,
is, yes.
Because I think we have nothing to worry about. My gut tells me we don't, but it doesn't necessarily say that in the financial
Well,
statements.
it's great to have things in writing and know where they are, so I would like to know as well. So we had a plan to do these as three separate motions. I don't think there's any connection to the people who made them the first time, so if you...
I would move the council approve the 2018-19 water utility financial statements as presented.
I'll second it again.
All in favor? Carried.
I'd move the council approve the 2018-19 electrical utility financial statements as presented.
Seconded, Councillor Now, all in favor? And the third one.
I move that council approve the 2018-19 consolidated financial statements as presented.
Okay, seconded again by Councillor Now. You're doing well. You were on that one before. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Excellent. Done for poor old Luke. Done for another year.
Age-friendly community committee.
We have some items to recommend to council. I can bring make this legible. There are some benches that are donated. Is that correct, Mr. Hyde?
we have a few requests for bench donations
Donations,
currently.
Yes, okay.
They often come with suggestions as to where they'd like to put them, but that's also because we don't have a list of places that we're looking for.
Right. So we talked about that, and the upshot was that the committee recommends to council that staff be directed to conduct a public survey to determine optimal locations for benches in the community. So I so move that staff be so directed.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Now, all in favor? Good-o. La
And
prochaine.
the next one is that because of there was information that came out of the Vic report for the summer activity, and it was interesting that a high percentage of the people who came in were, in their estimate, that were seniors, and some of the issues that they presented were difficulty reading the maps that were offered. They had no GPS, so their ability or their direction finding was challenged, and there were parking issues that they identified as well. So we thought it would be a good idea for staff to talk more with the chamber about some of those about that information and what actions might come out of that. So I move that council direct staff to speak with the Mahone Bay Tourism and Chamber of Commerce to learn more about the recommendations concerning parking and map issues. So that may end up coming
Yeah,
back to economic development.
Just make a comment on that.
Can we get a seconder for the motion?
Second that.
Councillor Feeney, Councillor Bain, please.
Actually, we can, okay, I'll make a comment. Three of us were at a meeting last night, the mayor, councillor, and myself, and mapping was something else that came up, so I think a good comprehensive map of Mahone Bay, which then things can be overlaid onto it, is something that we should have, and it's obviously very lacking. And well, we don't have to go into last night's meeting, but there wasn't really a meeting, I guess, but it was something that did come up, that we were lacking in having a good comprehensive map showing all the streets and so on. And I'll just leave that.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up? I know we're on a motion, but that map was developed for that purpose.
And that
Is there any
map
specific
is
feedback about it?
extremely hard to read.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
I've got an appointment to talk with Mo. about
okay, that would be
maps.
great. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we capture what would be better.
Yeah.
If we don't want the aerial, I think they thought it would be helpful to see the building coverage, but it does make it very hard to see
The
the streets.
trees, yeah.
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 I believe
Many
that,
trees in town.
so I believe that the context of this discussion was a debriefing process that occurred between the chamber and the administrators and the management of the VIC. So it wasn't a kind of a global discussion around parking per se. It was really specific to just VIC related parking issues. For example, they were talking about where are we allowed to park if we have a Winnebago or a large motorhome, and like what is our town official policy? You can park at the ball field. You can park. So I think there will be some good feedback from that if we can follow up. So I think that there is a comprehensive report, I believe.
Well, yeah, it wasn't comprehensive, but it was a summary of issues that came
Right.
up. Yeah.
I think
And
it
it
will
included
generate
the
some
RV.
reasonably good questions that perhaps town hall needs to
Yeah.
consider,
Yeah.
perhaps the
Yeah.
chamber needs
Yeah.
to consider.
And like the report that we just received from
Yeah.
Ben and Nabila,
Yeah.
good to have right now as we're
Yeah.
getting into transportation plan.
This whole RV parking in Lunenburg is a big moneymaker.
Huh.
Up in the-
Electrical,
Yeah.
you charge big.
Yeah,
If we can charge up your electric car, we can charge up your RV.
there you go. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Just one comment on the membership thing there. I'm not sure that the Mr. Lamar, the principal of Bayview School, would be the principal of Bayview Cemetery.
Oh, no.
These are the draft minutes.
Yeah,
These are the draft minutes until the next AFC meeting, so I'm
Very
sure,
good,
I'm sure the chair will make sure we
Good
fix
catch.
that.
Good
While we're
catch.
talking about miscues, I think it's Miss Parks Rubley, not Mr.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Where's the miss?
The next, before the next motion that's coming up, it's not Mr. Parks Rubley, is it?
No, it's Ms. down below, so.
Oh, it's Miss.
Pennies one last item.
That's right.
on that.
Okay.
These are draft for a reason, but we
Yeah.
get some good corrections.
All right, so
See, I didn't read
on to the third item coming up.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell Kelly these things? A recommendation for a new member, so we're move the council approve Mary Beth
That
Eldridge.
she be appointed to.
That Mary Beth, thank you, Mary Beth Eldridge be appointed to the Age Friendly Community Advisory Committee.
Seconded. Councillor Feeney, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Just to,
Mary Eldridge from Chesapeake?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Just curious, I know
the town now.
Richard Eldridge is one.
That was a really interesting meeting. We had a delegation that came in to speak about
Very interesting.
access to cannabis and from a municipal perspective, and it was, I'm sure other people around the room have heard a similar package of information, but I thought it was riveting. Actually,
Access
we were.
to cannabis.
It was about vaping, and it was about how things we should be aware of as the legislation evolves, and it was terrific. And I think we had the delegation that went well beyond the 10 minutes, and everybody was there with vape. It was really interesting presentation. So
Okay.
I just want to say that since this last meeting, have received an email with a resignation from the committee.
No.
Who's that?
Ann Harrison has resigned from the committee, so
Okay.
we'll be looking for
She
new-
wasn't at the last meeting.
so I don't know if this is an occasion to ask staff to start the process again. Do I need to put that as a motion?
I would go ahead and make it a motion now. I think it's appropriate
okay.
under this item.
So I would like to, council.
She's still in the report on that.
Yes, I would like to direct council to, I'm sorry, Mayor, may I do that? Ask council to direct staff to seek another member to fill the vacancy on the Age-Friendly Community Advisory Committee.
Start the selection process.
Start the selection process. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
That's a motion?
Yes,
All seconder? All in favor? Motion's carried.
thank you.
Let's go jump down to the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program.
So, oh, darn it, I just used my minutes again.
I do.
The main thing I wanted to draw council's attention to in the senior safety program is the things that came up during the Dorian and the week following, when a huge amount of time was spent by the senior safety coordinator. And so issues came up like such as people not knowing where the warming or the comfort stations were, and that was perhaps more in the district than in our town. Although a question did come up recently about that. And the other is just to be aware about the loss of power and what it means for people who are on oxygen and who have medications that need to be kept refrigerated. So I'm just putting it out to highlight that those are some issues that we should all be aware of for emergency management. And I'm sure when we meet our new remote officer or coordinator, we'll be talking more about some of those things.
Richard, does the fire department maintain a roster of people who have medical equipment or are on oxygen or something that?
Most people they have on oxygen. A lot of them will have a sticker on their door. So if we respond to the other residents, we know before we go in that they are on oxygen.
Yeah, when you respond.
Otherwise, we don't. No, we have no means of knowing
Okay.
who might be and who not. It'd be a good idea if it was happening.
I thought Jimmy
How we
would
would-
keep a list, but
You know, what,
I did.
I thought he did too, yeah.
I can speak to that. We have a critical contact list because we have our utility, and that is people have the option to add their name to that. If, for instance, something like someone on oxygen,
Mhm.
we know that. And the reason we have that is because we can send that if we know there's a power expected or something. We can call them if we have notice at all and just say, this is expected. That is not, it's another thing that people don't always maintain, but we do have a list of sorts here.
Is that something that we should be notifying the citizens, like maybe the mayor's newsletter, that if you fall into this category, then you put your name on a list with town hall? I mean, if people don't know they can do that,
If
right?
the town had a list of people that needed special needs during a power outage.
But they have
Or
to
then-
come in and tell us.
That's right, they should notify the town hall, but then it'd be also good if maybe a copy of that list was presented to the fire department, so we'd have a.
Well, there was a suggestion last night at the meeting that Councillor Bain and Councillor Carver and I attended, that in some areas that's what happens, is the list gets shared. If there's a question of confidentiality of how you got the information and blah, 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 but basically it does get shared with first responders, so you would know.
But I think if the town's maintaining a list, that could be made known to the people on the list that this will be shared with first responders.
Exactly.
Well, our permission.
Yeah, so that they are aware of it and that they
That
give permission
by
for it.
putting their name on the list, they're giving us their permission to share it with first
Yeah,
responders.
that would cover any
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. But I think it's something we might want to, if staff were to clarify,
Mm-hmm.
then we could make notice to our citizens to let them
Yeah.
know that that option is there.
Exactly.
And can that be part of the Code Red sort of registration and system? Or is that-
No, that's
Something.
really separate.
It's separate, okay.
Yeah, that
And
would
I
really-
don't think, because this isn't really about,
We're
yeah,
not
I think it'd be
yeah.
best to keep it separate
Keep it
anyway.
separate.
I agree.
But in
Okay.
terms of trying to compile the list, traditionally, as Mo said, the purpose for us is, would the power outage itself cause you distress?
Yes, yeah.
And so we need to decide if that's still the limit of what we're tracking, because as broadly as Richard said it, like, would you need special assistance during a outage?
Mhm.
Is a bit of a broader question and would be useful to the fire department, but we'd have to consider, do we want to go to that, because that's,
Mhm.
we might then be talking about a number of different kinds of issues that people would
Yeah,
have.
I mean, it could be mobility.
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah,
Councilor
yeah.
Carver mentioned the medication in the fridge. I
Yeah.
never thought of that,
Yeah,
because
you
I've
don't.
never had
Yeah.
medication that had to be kept in the fridge, but it's a reasonable.
But if we're gonna maintain this list, then we should have some kind of an action plan associated with it, so that if it happens, we can help these people out.
Well, that's the big challenge,
Well,
because
and
with the
that-
power
that's the
outage,
challenge.
we have a plan, get the power back, so.
And that-
So is this something that we need a motion to direct staff to?
I guess it depends how far you want to go. If we just wanted to say in the newsletter that we do maintain a list for the purpose of the electrical utility and to get in touch with us if you think that maybe you should be on that list. I mean, Maureen, I don't think we need to do anything special for that.
No, but I think I would like to have the staff consider what other things we might have on that list and what is it gonna mean to staff activity to undertake that.
So I think
Because
for
you'd
now,
have to
maybe ask us
define-
for a report and we'll contemplate
You'd
the
have
bigger
to
question.
define what's gonna go on the list.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we invite Angela Henhofer
Henhofer,
to come and speak with council, introduce herself and talk about these issues, and that we can discuss that question with her at that time and then make a recommendation to staff.
Sounds
Because
good.
it would just sort of help flesh out the
yeah.
issues a little more.
I think I just had an email on something similar to that subject, that asking whether the fire department was a comfort station, et cetera, where the, yeah. I just got a glance of it today, so
Yeah.
I didn't have time to respond to it.
I was asking you and the CAO
Yeah.
because the
Mhm,
question
yeah.
came up
Mhm.
last night,
Yeah,
right? About where is, I mean, at one point it was the churches and it was the fire hall, and then Remo said, no, don't make it the fire hall because they're gonna be responding in time of emergency. And then the churches disappeared and it was back to the fire
Not the
hall.
fire hall, and as far as I understood, it always has been the fire hall.
Is that
Because
due to the
because we
generator?
do have the generator, we have all the facilities there that we
But
need.
somebody called
Mine's-
somebody at the fire hall during Dorian and got a rather obtuse response from the person that she was talking with.
Oh, really?
Respond to this because this is something we changed a few years ago, and there are really strict guidelines about comfort stations.
Yeah.
So one
Which
of
are
the guidelines.
changing by the way.
Well, one of them that we're working under now is that the fire department cannot operate a comfort center because they may be called out in case of an emergency. And to have a comfort center, you need to have people that will be there and be present. So we did have different locations identified in town, but there was no one to be there to unlock the doors, that kind of thing. So
And no
what
one
we have.
interrupted power.
That was also an issue in other places. So what we've ended up with now, and we've had this in place for a few years, is the fire hall
Mhm.
is our comfort center, and the Lions Club would be the ones that would operate it. So yes, if someone called the fire hall, they wouldn't get much of an answer because that's
Okay.
a firefighter. But it's the Lions Club that would activate, that would be there if the center
And
were
who
activated.
makes the decision to contact the fire hall and contact the Lions Club
Mhm.
and say, put the coffee on and unlock the door?
So the last few situations, I've been the contact if we needed to do that, and then of course we've always said to them, if you feel the need that you want to do that, go ahead.
You're saying that to the Lions Club and
Yes.
or the fire hall?
No, because the fire department is outside of this because they have to go. They have to be ready to respond to emergencies. The chief,
But someone
Knows
has to
what
We,
unlock the
ha-
hall.
we
They
have,
have keys.
keys because we own the fire hall.
yeah, they have keys.
Okay.
Yeah, we have them.
But I think that's where the confusion
Why isn't
You have a key,
Remo?
though.
Why isn't Remo orchestrating that decision?
Well, so Remo comes in terms of discussion of should we open it.
Open it or not.
So there might be a scenario where it's top down, where Remo might recommend to us that we open it. But there are also lots of scenarios where it's coming from the bottom up, where even maybe the Lions are saying we're
Depends on
willing,
the
we're
extent
willing
of-
to open it,
It's
and
depending on
Remo
the-
says there's not something at the regional level, but if
And
you
but-
want to
but-
do it, you know, it's your comfort station.
But I think the difference may be between a comfort station and a warming station. So Remo takes responsibility for calling the ones where it's overnight and there are beds and there are showers and there are very
Well, so
strict
that's
We
the
don't
requirements.
do
next.
that.
That's
Whereas
the
I
third.
think
That's the next
That's a-
level up.
That's a shelter.
Oh,
Yeah.
72
Yeah,
hours.
Remo
That's a
does
show.
come in on that because that's with the Red Cross, and that's in Bridgewater.
Right.
Community college was last one.
Yeah,
So
community college.
given the kind
Some
of
issues.
the level of confusion around this table, I think we need to get
Well,
clarity from
I've
Angela
asked the question of
Henhofer.
the fire chief, and
Yeah.
but Henhofer doesn't know either.
But we need to
Because the last direction that we had from her predecessor, right?
Yeah.
Was that Lions Club can choose to activate, or the fire
and that
hall
was
can
my
choose to
understanding.
activate. It was the guy, what's the job the guy in Chester does?
I mean, he's our local EMO coordinator, but
Yeah.
it's predominantly an advisory role.
It's a
From what I can.
But what was supposed to happen is he would contact the comfort centers in Mahone Bay and the CAO and activate the comfort center. But that's gone by the by now.
My
Remo has
understanding was
nothing
that
to
it was a local call, that we could make a decision ourselves.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
it is
that's
ultimately
the
a local
most
call,
recent
yeah.
direction. But Angela Henhofer intimated last night that the whole process is under review yet again. But right now we have a situation where people don't know who to call.
Right,
Yeah.
so we need Angela Henhofer.
And the thing we need to look at too is, it's in our area. I mean, we might not be without power within the town of Mahone Bay, but Oakland, Clearland, Maidus Cove might be. So
Yeah.
we have to take into consideration those.
And that's
People
where it would
also-
come top down through Remo, because what they're talking to MODL, who are talking to their residents who want to have that. So then they might come to us and say,
But
We're
we won't have anything to
recommending.
do with it.
Although Indian Point has got the full slate of uninterrupted power systems that we paid for the generator or contributed
Yeah.
to it. They can provide all of that
Mhm.
down
Yeah.
there. Anyway, the question is on the table. When I get something back in writing from the authorities on the project, we'll see what happens.
and what question is on the table? Is it to
Oh, there
invite
isn't a
Angela?
question on the
Is that-
table, I think I did.
No,
I
the one
just-
that I wrote to you and Richard.
Oh yes, okay.
And-
Sorry, I thought you meant there was a
Who makes
motion.
that decision?
There was a motion on the
And
floor.
it's anybody's
I'm-
guess.
I'm almost working up to a motion about, I think it's really going to be after we've got clarification on
Yes.
what the correct procedures are, that we advertise that in a mayor's newsletter.
Absolutely
Yeah.
agree.
And very clearly.
Yeah.
that
So we
people
got two
know.
things. We've got the notion of the comfort center, and we've also got the issue around the list of
Yeah,
potential
Yeah.
support requirements.
and
For now, I'll just follow up to you by email. And
Yes,
you can
please.
decide to put it on the next month's agenda.
Yep.
and it's, I assume.
And the Remo, we've never met with Angela. I met her last night.
Yeah, but are we inviting
Except
her to
for the
come and talk
parking
with
lot.
us?
I would prefer to wait until after the 18th of November.
Mm-hmm,
That's when she has her Remo meeting
Oh, okay.
with the board.
okay.
And I suspect that because there are changes
Right.
pending, that's going to be one of the topics on the agenda. Getting the chili, John, or the hot flashes?
Turn it on. It's just in the wrong spot.
Story of my life, John.
Hmm.
Is that it for the senior safety?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
let's
yeah.
go to the September 2019 accounts. Entertain a motion.
Accounts be paid in sum of $365,463.10.
Second that.
These bills, I assume, have already been paid. It's just are we required by the municipal governance laws to approve these bills?
This is a grand old tradition Councils since probably 1919 have always approved the checks.
Okay.
It used to be done before they were signed. At some point, it was deemed to be actually an administrative responsibility to pay these bills. So now the reports just come and are accepted by council. It's really for information.
Okay.
I personally don't feel that it is of a lot of value, because what you're really trying to track is the year-to-date line items, not the specific checks
That's
that you don't know where they're being accounted to. Or,
Right.
but that being said, yeah, it is. I'd say probably about a third of municipal units still
Right.
do put it on the agenda.
It's just an so this is, you know, I don't know how. This is probably the third year. I don't think I've ever asked that question, but I was just looking at this document, which is improving all the time, and it has the dates on it. I guess the real issue is I wouldn't want to have Poor Advocate Media wait 2 months for us to get around and pay the bill, considering the check was cut on the 9th. So anyway, self-explanatory.
Yeah, so that's why it became for
Yeah,
information.
no,
Because in this day
fair
and age,
enough.
you wouldn't. I mean, in 1919, you probably would have just made them wait. But
And I think most of the things are almost
Oh, yeah.
self-explanatory. You know, there's money going to the school, they're going to the province, going to Chester, going to MJSB.
if there were anything unbudgeted, we'd have a separate staff report like we did with the overage with the chip sale, for example.
But we're not really approving the payment of these bills. We're just simply taking the information on the bills paid over the last 2 months for information
Yeah.
purposes.
You're just
We're accepting
this
the
for
oversight responsibility.
Fair enough. Well, hearing that,
And I guess what it does too a little bit is it, because only the mayor and sometimes the deputy mayor are actually seeing the checks, it does give everyone a high level of
Sure.
I agree.
Sisaboo Custom Cycles.
Oh, have I?
Why does that name ring a bell?
They're a coffee company too.
the vendor, the mobile vendor.
Are they?
But I don't know if the Sisaboo is, I'm sure, a name, a place name or something.
Okay.
Sisaboo is a place name.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tormont Cat Maritime, $7,992.50. That's number 0118093.
It's cat, it's really getting winter equipment ready for the season. Is it cat as in
Caterpillar.
Caterpillar? Okay, yeah. So
I
well, right
think-
now we're getting everything ready for the season. And
I
some of the
think that
equipment is still
$79.92 is the rental for the generator that was used over at
Oh, yeah, that could be that too. Yeah.
at the water treatment plant for 3 days.
And we now have our own generator project, so it really shows the
Oh.
value of that.
There's only one in all of the Atlantic provinces at the time, and it was $2,000 to move it, and then and then take it back again, and that's what we paid for rental for 3 days.
Wow.
Anyway,
So
just
when the province asked us for Dorian costs, we had a surprisingly large number. We had about $23,000, even though it was just overtime in the electrical utility, paying the guys from Berwick to come help out, renting that generator for the utility. No damages, just all this
but it
stuff.
did cost
Do they
us
just
money.
take that for information purposes?
If it's big enough, they'll help, but it would have to be,
Okay.
what they're trying to establish is the overall provincial level doesn't meet the level for them to get federal help. And if they don't get federal help, their answer is, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Which is always strange, because they're still in between us and the feds, but.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Grand.
all in favor?
Buy a container for
Motion's
that.
carried. Bills are paid.
Well, we won't need a generator next year, so.
Curfew shall not ring tonight. All right,
So we have a closed session.
all in favor of going in camera? Motion. Who?
I'll move the motion.
Sorry. Deputy Mayor moves. Councillor now seconds. All in
Getting ahead of
favor.
myself.
We're in camera.